Welcome to the Blightcast, the Ronimo Games official Blightbound podcast. My name is Slow Wolf. Today we will be speaking with Gijs, the art director at Ronimo Games. Gijs, hello.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing fine.
So, okay.
I'm doing
just
well.
Oh, that's excellent. That's good to hear, especially considering how busy it must be right now. So,
Yeah, it's really hectic.
I don't doubt it. So I'm glad that you had the time to take out of your busy schedule to come and talk to me today. I do have a couple of questions for you, and I'm really glad that you said yes to the interview. So let's get started, so that way we don't take up too much of your time. First off, for those of you who do, for those people that don't know who you are and what you do at Ronimo, who are you and what do you do at Ronimo?
Well, I'm Gijs Hermans. I'm one of the co-founders of Ronimo, and I'm also the art director at Ronimo. So my main task is to make sure that all the art assets are created with the same style in mind, and I lead the art team, basically.
That sounds like that would be a lot of work, considering. But then,
Yeah, it used to be more of a creating job in which I did a lot of character design, etc. myself. But with Blightbound, it's become more of a management task because we expanded the amount of artists we have. So
right.
I do less of the art directly, and I do more of the keeping consistency and meetings and etc.
Makes sense. And it sounds like that would be especially a lot of work for a new title like this, but we'll get to that in a second. How did you end up starting to work at Ronimo? As I understand it, you're one of the founding members, or?
Yeah, I'm one of the founding members. So basically, the story of Ronimo is we did a project at HQ, which was the Blob. THQ bought the rights of that game, and we thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we as students stick together and create our own company? So we created our own company, and in the beginning we worked on a game called Snowball Earth.
Yeah, I
And
remember
later
seeing the
on,
prototype for that.
what did you say?
I remember seeing like
Sorry.
a prototype video for that or something like that on the internet.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was pretty
yeah,
cool.
you can look it up. And back at the day, we used to do 3D graphics, but we changed it up for Sword of Soldiers to 2D.
Yep.
Also because we created our own engine, and 2D engine was easier, but also it fit well with the artist we had at the time, and that's how we grew into the 2D kind of games. So
Yeah.
that's how I started. And like I said, I used to be just a 2D artist, so doing characters and backgrounds, etc.
And now, like, you've done 3D back then on the Blob, but now we're at this point where we're working with like a 2.5D environment, and we'll definitely get to that in a second. But let's go ahead and keep that where it needs to be right now, because
Yeah.
I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Yeah.
But no, that's excellent to hear, and the rest of it is largely on the internet at this point. The games are all available in some way, shape, or form. And yeah, your influence is palpable. So let's talk about Awesome Nuts and Swords and Soldiers for a minute. Those are probably the two games that your studio is best known for, and they both have like a particular kind of vibe that's similar between the two. You end up having this, cartoonish kind of vibe, I guess. But how would you describe the art style of both those games and the philosophy that went into designing them the way that they look?
I think one of our core philosophies always is we try to aim for an animated look. So we want to have a clear division between background and characters, just like the old animation movies, the Disney movies, etc., in which there was always this distinction between the characters and the backgrounds, and I think in Sword of Soldiers 2, we came really close to that feeling, I think. But we're also restricted on other ends, as in we don't have that many animation frames as a regular animation, but I think our goal always is to create something fun and stylistic, because we like stylistic stuff. We don't like pure realism. Yeah, we like it in other games, but we don't like to create it ourselves, and it doesn't really fit our team. So we always want to create something stylistic differently, and most of the founders were kids of the 80s and 90s, so
which
we
explains
grew up
a
in
lot
that.
of Awesomenauts.
Yeah, it's very clear on Awesomenauts, and it's also, in a way, it's also in Blightbound, but we'll get back to that later on, I guess.
Yep.
And it's also clear in Sword of Soldiers, but Sword of Soldiers is more Asterix and Obelix. Not sure if you guys know that.
Oh, I know about Asterix and Obelix. Yeah.
Yeah,
they're excellent.
it's a comic. Yeah, we really like that kind of angle. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And those are legitimately good comic books, actually. I grew up with those. My mom really collects them. There's a whole stack of them. I think like almost the entire series on my left somewhere. So I know them pretty well.
What's also cool is that they're pretty historically accurate. Although it's really it's
definitely
dumb and stuff, but it also teaches you something about the Romans and the Galliers, or whatever they call
it in English. The Gauls and stuff.
Yeah.
So. But and then for Awesomenauts, you ended up that you said that the Ronimo studio is made up from a lot of kids from the 80s and stuff is one thing, but there is a lot of references, pop culture references from the 80s in Awesomenauts, and more recent stuff as well. But from everything from the Soviet, from the Soviet monkey in Yuri to all this other stuff going on, like in the item descriptions and everything, it's everywhere. What would you say was, I guess, the most important influence as far as Awesomenauts' like style and like inspiration for its art?
Earthworm Jim and Bucky O'Hare, I would say, and
nice.
And also those are concept artists from now, but they're called Creature Box, and they are the concept artists from Ratchet and Clank. They're also a huge inspiration in the beginning for us. And a weird one, but back in the day when we started Awesomenauts, we also watched a lot of Naruto, and Froggy G is basically we came up with Froggy G based on Naruto because he has a lot of frogs. And later on, the turtles are also a good inspiration. But I think, I think Earthworm Jim is pretty close because it's also in space, and Bucky O'Hare as well.
Right on. And that really feeds into that 80s Saturday morning cartoon vibe that you guys kind of pitched as well at the time, and continue to do so for the rest of Awesomenauts' development. What would you say was your favorite thing to make for that game?
My favorite thing to make, I wasn't even that involved, but one of my favorite things is, we added that in free to play, is the opening sequence in which the jets, you see all the drop pods, and you have the logo disappear, and you have the sound. And it feels really anime and 80s, 90s cartoonish for me, and with the music as well. So I really like what it added. Although it's a really small thing in a way.
Yeah, but it is really cool, and everybody sees it and pays attention to it because it shows people what their matchup is and who they're up against and stuff in a way that's, again, really stylish, to borrow a word that you've been using a lot.
Yeah, and it creates the 80s, 90s vibe. It creates the animation vibe, which I like. So I think that's one of the coolest things. And yeah, I like a lot of the characters, but so do a lot of people, I think. And I think everyone has his own personal favorite. So
for sure. I mean, it's hard for me to pick any one favorite, but I definitely get what you're saying. Now, all that said, we're currently working on Blightbound as a studio, and although you say that there's definitely some links between Awesomenauts, Swords and Soldiers, and then the current art style of Blightbound, including that definitely not realistic, but that that kind of stylish look, it's definitely different than Ronimo's previous work in a variety of different ways. When you describe the art philosophy of Awesomenauts, that was one thing. How would you describe the art philosophy behind maintaining Blightbound's look and aesthetic?
Well, we started out with, we want to do something completely different. Basically, that was the main goal when we started working on a new project. And a lot of us came from Sword Souls 2, and a lot of us came from Awesomenauts, so we did the cartoony games, and we wanted to create something dark. But as I said before, we didn't want to go realistic, so we wanted to go stylistically. And in the beginning, the game was way more as Awesomenauts, although
really
stylistically, yeah, it was way more cartoony. The barbarians were way more cartoony, and we started out as a spoof of Conan.
Alternate universe.
Yeah, there was also an animation. It was about a Conan-like figure who went to a bar and beheaded everyone. People probably know what it is, but I forgot the name. But it was an animation that was also a parody on that kind of vibe, on the 80s, 90s Arnold Schwarzenegger barbarian.
Yeah.
And that's what we started out with. You can still see the remnants of this in Crom, which is one of the characters. We reshaped him a little bit, but in the beginning it was like one-on-one Arnold Schwarzenegger and Conan, basically, kinda.
Yeah, I can still see that influence there. Looking at the character myself, so for sure.
And we changed that a little bit more and added, because in the beginning we didn't have any lore of itself. We thought, oh, we just want to make like a spoof thing, more of like a parody. And eventually, we when everything came together a little bit more, we saw that the graphics, we were a little bit torn between the cartooniness and what we wanted to achieve, because we also wanted to have a game that looked different, and that's when we started to change things up. So in the beginning the game was also cel shaded.
Right. Wait, really?
Yeah, we changed the art style, in which made the characters more painted, and the backgrounds also more 3D-ish, combined with 2D assets. And we restyled the characters, so we reproportioned every character. And at that moment in time, our inspiration became more in the Magnolia corner, so Hellboy and a couple of other artists.
Yeah, I can definitely see that now.
More stylistic look, and now it's still stylized, but it's a little bit more serious, because we thought we wanted to appeal more to a crowd who plays also games like Diablo, etc. And we thought this look fitted that kind of audience a little bit more than the original parody we had.
Right.
And looking back on it, I think it was a good idea. And that's when we also introduced the lightsabers, because in the beginning the characters didn't have a light weapon.
Right.
But the game was very how do you say, hard to distinguish between good guys and bad guys, and it was very busy.
Right.
And what we did then was we gave each character his own light weapon that at least focus was on the character, and
you could tell roughly where your weapon was, and
and we introduced these subtle colors of each of the classes have their own color schemes.
Mm-hmm.
So we created some more distinction, and eventually it ended up being what it is now. And like I said in the beginning, we started out with more of a spoof kind of idea, but now we eventually created a lore and our own world instead of just making a parody on the worlds that were already there. And I think that took off nicely, but it was a lot of work as well.
So to kind of recap, then the core focus behind a lot of Blightbound's art direction then is to create a more a darker and more intense version of Ronimo's previous style to take it away from the kind of bright, vibrant colors and look of stuff like Awesomenauts and that kind of inspiration, and bringing it closer in line to more of those darker toned graphic novels, like you mentioned Hellboy earlier. And
I think that's a good summary.
And to be clear, like, this is definitely still like Ronimo's kind of style, though. When I look at the stills, the pictures, and at the characters when I'm playtesting the game, it is very different from a game that has a similar kind of mood. So, like, for instance, Darkest Dungeon has a similar mood, but the style and like the way that they go about achieving the mood compared to what Blightbound is currently doing is very different. How would you kind of like reconcile, like, how does Ronimo make that mood work for them the way that they need it to be, so that way Ronimo's style still fits? Because
I think
that's a big jump for a lot of people to kind of follow, I guess.
I think that has a lot to do with the people working on it. I think, for instance, Valve does a lot of the levels, and it's always his flavor and his taste in it. So, in a way, he represents a part of the Ronimo style, just as I do, and just as the other people who work at Ronimo. And because there's not a huge, we still have basically the same people we used to have for Awesomenauts and for Sword Soldiers, so that makes it easy to keep like a consistent style and vibe, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
So it has a lot to do with the people working on the project, that it feels like Ronimo in a way, and I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that too. There's some parts of it where I'm like, hey, look, I recognize how that art style works with Xenia's splash art, and then how that translated to some of the rogues, for instance, and like how their general shape and form looks like, because the classes are kind of split amongst like a different along a particular silhouette, and I can see that there. And I know that you already kind of answered this already, but when you were talking about the light weapons and such, but the art style that you chose like partway through development and that you changed to accommodate certain needs, has that, like, by adding on the light weapons and all that stuff, has that had the effect that you wanted for the game's mechanics? And is there anything else that you can think of from the art side of the game that has had an effect on the mechanics and gameplay of Blightbound so far? That you can tell me anyway. Keep in mind, like, both of us have to kind of keep like a list of things. It's like, okay, I can talk about this, can't talk about that.
I think what we did with light weapons was a really good decision, because it just gave more focus. Even when you play the game now, it's still at moments can be very busy, because you're playing with 3 players at once, fighting a lot of enemies at once, so it's gonna be hectic. But we tried everything we could to at least make this feel better and make sure that the player knows where he is. And the second question was,
like, whether or not that will have like, if there's anything else that this will kind of affect, that the art will affect in the game. So, like, I think you kind of have described, though, that you are like doing the best you can as an art studio to kind of like keep this going in a way that the player can understand where they are and what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then you've also there's also other subtler things like panels on the ground lighting up, or if they're activatable or stuff. So that you already answered that question, so don't worry about it. Okay. Last couple of questions, and then I promise I'll let you go. So,
no problem.
Do you think that Blightbound's art style will change in the future, or is it going to stay like very much the same? And the reason I ask this is because you can tell with Ronimo's work that over time, Ronimo grew a lot as a developer, and you could see the drastic change between the earlier characters and the later characters, both in terms of the splash art and then the sprites, to the point where Clunk and Lone Star got remade almost entirely. Is that something that you think will happen with Blightbound as well, or do you think that the art style is mature enough that it should be able to stay right where it is without needing to change too much?
I think it's bound to happen if the game is supported as long as Awesomenauts. So, because if the game is a success and people want more of it, you're probably gonna expand the company, and you're gonna have more artists, and because
and then when you add the artists, right, you add more to the Ronimo style stew. Like you mentioned before, every single artist has their own
you add
flavor,
more,
right?
But I think time is one of the biggest factors, because when we created Awesomenauts, and when we created Clunk, there's a gap of 7 years or something.
Yeah.
With the revamp Clunk, and we learned a lot, and we wanted to show what we learned, and we don't want to hold back. What we could have done was hold back when we created every new character, hold back what we can do now. But we didn't want to, because we wanted to make every character better and cooler and more unique and animate better and have better VFX. And eventually that will lead up to having some characters feel outdated. And if that happens with Blightbound as well, I only see this as a big success, because that means that we are allowed to support it for a long time, and that the game is a success. So, in my opinion, it would be great, and I'll probably think a lot of stuff will be
improved, like over time.
Improved over time, and for instance, dungeons. I think we learned so much creating these dungeons that these lessons will be taken for the next dungeons, so to make it easier. So yeah, it's a learning experience.
Yeah, and if anything, it just goes to show that with the previous games that Ronimo's worked on, that the maturity of the studio has definitely improved over time and has become what it is now. Blightbound kind of represents like all of that kind of coming together, and it looks the part too. I've got to say, it looks gorgeous so far. So
thanks.
Yeah, keep at it. Like you guys are doing great work. All right. Well, I'm kind of out of questions. If there's anything else you want to add, I mean, like, be my guest. But I think that this is good enough for our very first Blightcast.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, if there are people who have specific questions, then they can ask you, and you can ask me later on, and I'll answer them.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, it was fun to do this, and maybe later on we could also share some images of
I would
what we have.
Very much like that, because at the moment all people are seeing right now pop up on the screen are stills from the trailer, which is the best I'll be able to really do. So hopefully that's enough. But yeah, thank you very much, Gijs.
Yeah, we really like to share what we also did with Awesomenauts. I think Joost shared a lot of the pre-production work on his blog, and later on in the project, I think it would be really cool to share this as well, because it's too bad a lot of pre-production work gets lost in hard disks of people working on it and never gets shown to other people.
I agree.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm sure that we'll have you back on then to show that off once the game gets more fully released, so we can actually see it. Because I'll be here for a little while, and this won't be the last episode.
Yeah, great, cool,
cool. Well, thanks again for coming by. Thanks for sitting here and being interrogated, I guess, and we hope to see you again soon, Gijs.
Yeah, thanks, Phil.
Thank you, everybody, so much for watching and or listening to this very first episode of the Blightcast. If you wanted to go ahead and find this on other places where podcasts and videos are available, we will be on YouTube, and as soon as possible, we will be up on Spotify and the iTunes store as well, and other places where podcasts are available. Please make sure to subscribe, and if you are listening to this on a podcasting service, to leave a rating, so that way this is more easily found by other people who might be interested in this kind of inside baseball look at how Ronimo's been developing their latest game, and in the future, in terms of just Blightbound in general. At least that's the idea. For now, please do let us know what you think of the podcast, if you'd like to, at my email, which is phillip, Philip@ronimo-games.com. And if you can, also leave a comment anywhere where you can find us. You can also find us on our Discord, discord.gg/Ronimo, and you can go ahead and speak to us there as well, ask us questions, and be a part of the community. For now, that's it from us. Thanks again, and we'll see you folks next time in the Blightcast.